Welcome back to Sinister Sisters. It's Sinister Sunday. And it's my episode this week, which means we're talking about true crime.
Whoop! I'm just the
I
soundboard
am
this
Shrimp.
weekend.
And this is
Cat!
Yeah! And we are your Sinister Sisters. And we host this podcast.
We do.
Yay!
Yeah!
It's my episode today, as I have already said. And today, we are talking about the Moors murders.
Ooh.
This is our last episode where we have a season theme. So, the last episode of DV Studios, and then from this episode on, we'll have whatever the hell I want, murder-wise.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. So, if you want to hear a specific case, then you should leave it in the case request form, which is in our Instagram bio, which is at sinistersisters.podcast. It's in the episode notes, I think.
Yep.
And you can also follow us on YouTube at Sinister Sisters Podcast, TikTok at Sinister Sisters Podcast, and you can also email us at sinistersisterspod@gmail.com.
Hell yeah.
I think that is all the self-promotion.
Yes.
Am I missing anything? What's that?
I don't think so.
Oh. That's all the self-promotion. I'm not missing anything. Cool.
Can you not hear me?
Cool. I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I just think I got confused because I said, "Is that all the self-promotion?" And you said no.
I said yeah. I think so. Well, maybe.
Oh, because I said, "Is that all the self-promotion? Did I miss anything?" And you said, "No, I think that whatever." I was confused. I am practically
Communication
illiterate,
is key.
boys. So
Boys?
communication. Yeah, I said boys.
Mostly girls,
unfortunately.
actually. I was just watching this
Mostly girls.
TikTok, and she was like doing like a get ready with me or whatever, and
those are fun.
And I guess a notification popped up on her phone, and she was like, smiling at a notification from a man. I know better than that. Well, that was very funny.
We do. Are you watching The Last of Us?
No, because I don't have Crave.
Oh, because I cancelled my Crave.
I cancelled my Crave, and I'm too much of a cheap bitch to pay for it, so.
Vibe, honestly. You should get it, though. It's good.
Yeah.
Just to watch The Last of Us.
Yeah, I should.
And Euphoria.
We also don't have Netflix anymore.
Why?
Because Netflix...
Oh, the password sharing?
Because Netflix was like, you can't share your password. So
Netflix...
Skinny Boy's mum cancelled her subscription.
Netflix is a scam. Honestly, that's so stupid. But, like, also, I get that, like, oh, we need more people to buy our subscription. But what if... Because it went by your IP, right? Like, that's how they knew. But, like...
Like the password thing?
Yeah, what if I travel for work? What if I travel for fun?
Yeah.
What if I...
Yeah.
Go and visit my parents for a weekend and then want to watch my Netflix show? Like, those are different IPs, but, like, it's still me, you know?
Yeah. Or what if I'm rich and bougie and I have a cottage or lake house?
If you're rich and bougie and have a cottage and a lake house, you pay for 2 Netflix accounts. That's just how it is.
Tax the rich, baby.
I remember when Netflix was $5 a month. It's like $17 now.
You can get it for $6.99 if you also have to watch ads.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of watching Netflix, is there aren't any ads. Oh, what a scam. Yeah. Pay $6.99
well, you also
a
have
month.
to watch ads with Prime.
You can...
Prime makes you watch ads.
You can skip the ads on Amazon Prime.
Sometimes. They're like YouTube ads.
Ugh.
Like similar to that.
Honestly?
Yeah. And they're always for their own kind of subpar television programs.
Yeah. Honestly, it should be illegal. How can you just advertise something as streaming that's ad-free, and then when you get people hooked, everyone's cancelled their cable, you just make it ads again?
Yeah.
I'm so sick of being a
They literally
product.
did a full 360. They're like, we're gonna revolutionize cable. Okay, Netflix, you did it. And then every show is on a
Good
different
for you.
platform. So you have to buy 12 different platforms, which costs you $120 a month.
Right?
And then now you have to watch ads. So they thought they had us
Yeah,
fooled.
it's a literal
Yeah.
scam. It's a literal scam. I would not be surprised if all of the like CEOs or some shit of all the streaming companies are all like in
Probably.
cahoots. Like when Galen Weston increased the
Bread.
price of bread in Canada that
Fixing
time.
bread prices.
It was
Yeah.
bread, wasn't it?
It
Pretty
was
sure it
bread.
was bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's pay extra for bread.
Yeah, because they were keeping them low, actually. I don't think they were increasing them. They were keeping it low so they had the monopoly on bread, basically. They like created a false monopoly because they own their own bakeries. So then they can bake the bread
Yeah.
themselves, like at a pretty discounted rate, where all the other supermarkets have to buy bread from a distributor or from the Weston Foods bakeries, which are owned by Galen Weston. Yeah.
What a scam.
Yeah. Literally.
He's has having to talk to Senate or whatever now, right? Because he's accused of some other sort of scam.
Probably.
Mr.
He
Weston?
looks untrustable
Probably.
in the commercials. So
He
it's the
is.
eyes.
He's
Why
skeevy
do
looking.
scary rich men always have like pale eyes?
Because they're scary
Like,
rich
why are your
men.
eyes see through? They're not even blue. They're like literally see through.
Clear.
Like,
I don't know.
you're the devil, homie.
I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was literally a
Vibe.
10-minute tangent on price fixing and how being alive is a scam.
It is a real thing, Kat. It's a real thing that is causing strife to
Hey,
many a
man.
Canadian.
Here I am not being able to watch The Last of
Especially
Us.
because things are just so...
Strife.
Yeah, right? It was even filmed in Canada. Like,
yeah.
hello?
Wasn't it filmed like somewhere
But, like,
weird
also
too?
everything is so expensive in Canada. Alberta. That is fucking weird, I'm Alberta.
Like it was filmed at like the West Edmonton
There's
Mall
this
or
trending
something.
sound. It was like some campus of some university or school or something.
Mm.
There's this trending sound on TikTok, and it's like, and I asked myself, how could anybody act like this or whatever? And then it's like, and then it hit me. She's from Manitoba. And it's so funny watching a bunch of Americans call it literally Manitola or Manitoba. Because, like, what do you mean you don't know a whole ass province in the country that is your upstairs neighbor? Like,
I mean, to be fair, you thought Texas and Florida went next to each other, so
no, that's not what I'm saying. I don't care if they know where Manitoba is, but I know that Texas and Florida are both states in America.
Oh, I see. Like they
You
don't even
know?
know that it
I don't.
exists.
Yeah, like they don't know what a Manitoba is. Which honestly, good for them. I wish I didn't know what a Manitoba was.
We should throw a little wrench into the
Roasting Canada
plans
today.
and tell them about none of it.
Nunavut.
Because bet you no one's ever heard of that. Ever been
It
to a
was
Calor bud?
it was accumulated into Canada in 1999.
In
Nunavut
what,
was
sir?
made into a territory in 99.
Was it?
It's the kind of shit you learn in Canada. Yeah, I remember because it's the same year I was born.
I could have sworn that when we first moved to Canada, when I had to color the Canadian map, it was all Northwest Territories. Maybe I was just getting a really shit education.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was something to do with up there is 1999, and I'm pretty sure it's Nunavut because Nunavut's the newest.
Yeah.
Also, if you look really closely, some of the islands up there do look like a llama.
The more you know.
Anyways, let's get into this episode because I think
Oh my
it's going
God.
to be a relatively long one. I forgot to write down content warnings for this again because I'm stupid.
You also just
So
whacked your mic really
oh
hard.
no. Oh my goodness. I'll
Poor
start
Mike.
over. Oh, Melanie, I really liked her. The content warnings for this episode are murder, of course. We have the murder of children, sexual assault and rape, mentions of domestic violence, alcoholism. I think that's it. Just like general trauma.
Okay.
And mentions of war.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Kind of. It's like mentioned very briefly, but let's get into it because my iPad's at 15%.
Oh no.
So, the Moors murders were a series of killings committed by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley between 1963 and 1965 in Manchester, England. The victims were children between the ages of 10 and 17, most of whom were sexually assaulted before being murdered. The name Moors murders comes from the fact that the bodies of several victims were buried on Saddleworth Moor. You have heard of this case before, right, Caterino?
I think so.
Yeah.
Her name sounds really familiar, but his
We've
name
actually talked about
sounds fake.
Myra Hindley before because she's one of 3 women in the United Kingdom who've been given a whole life sentence. So we talked about her when we talked about Joanna Dennehy and also when we talked about Rosemary West because those are the other 2.
I see. That's probably why the name's ringing a bell.
Yes. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley met while working together at a chemical company in Manchester. They began a relationship and eventually started killing together. Their first victim was 16-year-old Pauline Reed. And then they murdered 4 more children, but we'll get into their the victims individually in a minute. The killings were particularly brutal and sadistic, and the details of the murders shocked the public when they were revealed during the trial. Brady and Hindley were eventually caught and sentenced to life in prison, and Hindley died in prison in 2002, while Ian Brady died in 2017, which is like way, like, he lasted for so much longer than she did, and it's wild because he was born in 1938, she was born in 1942, so there was an age gap of a few years.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Ian Brady's childhood was marked with instability and difficulty. He was born in Glasgow, Scotland on January 2nd, 1938, to his mother, who's called Margaret Stewart, who was an unmarried waitress. At this point, having a baby out of wedlock is like practically illegal.
Yeah.
It's like very extremely frowned upon. It is just, blasphemous. So she had very little support in raising him and was forced to give him to the care of Mary and John Sloan, who were a local couple who already had 4 children, only a few months after his birth. So he was essentially like adopted by them, but not like officially by any means.
I see.
Ian took their family name, so he became known as Ian Sloan. His mother continued to visit him throughout his childhood. Various authors have stated that he did torture animals, which is one of the 3 things in the homicidal triad, which you talked about last true crime episode.
Yeah.
But he objects to these accusations, which I don't know if that really means anything, but he says he didn't do it, so even though he did have kind of a rocky childhood, he was accepted into Shorelands Academy, which was a school for, quote, above average pupils. He left the school at age 15, which is just a year before other students did. In England, you go to school until you're 16, and then you can continue to carry on and do your O-levels? A-levels? A-levels?
A-levels.
Right?
Yeah.
A-levels. And so that's your extra 2 years, and then you go to university, or you can graduate when you're 16 and go out into the world and do whatever you want. So he left school at 15, so it's not as egregious as it would be in North America.
Yeah.
Where you're missing 3 years instead of just 1. He began working as a butcher's messenger boy and met a woman named Evelyn Grant, who became his girlfriend. Their relationship ended when he threatened her with a flick knife when she went to a dance with another boy. She went to the police, and he had to appear before the court with 9 charges against him, and he was placed on probation on condition that he goes and lives with his mother. By this time, Margaret had married a man named Patrick Brady, who was an Irish fruit merchant, and he got Ian a job at the market and also obviously gave Ian his last name. They're a cute little fruit family at this point.
A fruit family.
Ian was caught smuggling a sack of lead seals out of the market and was sent to prison for 3 months. He was released on November 14th, 1957, and eventually began working at Millwoods, a wholesale chemical distribution company. As a teenager, Brady became interested in crime, particularly Nazi war crimes, and the writings of the Marquis de Sade, who wrote like some pretty insane books and was really into like torturous sexual intercourse, to the point that, you know, in like Criminal Minds where they say he's a sadist,
Yeah.
sexual sadism comes from this man.
Really?
Like that. Yes.
Like he's like
Marquis de Sade.
the first person who ever wrote about it? Or
I think so, yeah.
just like that's what he displayed?
I don't really know, actually.
Okay. I was like, that's insane that he's the father of sexual sadism. Like, what a claim to fame, right? Anyway.
He's like super old though. This was like the 1500s of this dude, the Marquis, was writing this shit.
Okay. I don't know why I thought it was connected to like Nazi Germany. Ignore.
No. It's just like he was interested in Nazi war crimes and also like sexual crimes. So
I see. Okay.
Like not very good reading material, essentially.
Honestly, no. Kind of the worst reading material.
Yeah. He was also apparently fascinated by the idea of committing the perfect murder. His co-workers at Millwoods noticed that he read Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's book that literally like outlined what the final solution and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like his whole plan that he wrote before it was like a thing when he was in prison.
It's like
or whatever. I don't really know.
Manifesto, basically.
Yeah. It's like not ideal. It's not pre-bedtime reading.
No. Well, it could be if you're looking at it from like a historical perspective and understanding like lunacy in Hitler's mind, but yeah, maybe not.
I'm pretty sure that's not what this guy was doing.
No, he's kind of predisposed to like being a little bit
bleh.
Bleh.
Yeah. He read a lot of works on Nazi atrocities as well. He was also teaching himself German. So basically he was like, I love Hitler and I'm gonna
become Hitler.
Which is fucked.
Yeah.
Like, hello, Mr. Ian Brady? Like, look up to someone else.
Literally anyone else.
Well, within reason, but yeah. There's like, not really much worse that you can get than Hitler.
Yeah. There's like maybe like a handful of other people that would be just as bad.
Yeah. Whatever. Overall, his childhood was characterized by trauma and instability, which some say may have contributed to his criminal activities and his criminal lifestyle, whatever. But again, that's a conversation that is way above my pay grade. I did a year of university in psychology. I cannot tell you why people murder things. So, yeah.
Didn't you want to be, this is another tangent, but didn't you want to be a criminologist for a little while?
Forensic psychologist, but yeah. I did. I thought it would be interesting. but it was like a little bit too sciencey for me.
Hmm.
And I mean that in the sense of like it was a bit too much. Like the psychology classes that I was taking, it was too like hard of a science.
Yeah.
I'm not a mathematical or scientifically inclined person, so when I was looking into it, I was like, oh my god, let's figure out why these people did this. And then I realized that a lot of it would be like research
Yeah.
and like tests and not like, I'm Spencer Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, I didn't want to go to school for like 9 years.
Fair enough. I
So
feel you.
I'm in marketing now. Myra Hindley. She was born in Crumpsall on the 23rd of July 1942 to parents Nellie and Bob Hindley and raised in Gorton, which is in Manchester.
Hmm.
Then a working class area of Manchester, which is what it is, dominated by Victorian slum housing. Her father was apparently an alcoholic who was frequently violent towards his wife and children. The family home was in poor condition, and Hindley was forced to sleep in a single bed next to her parents' double bed. Their living situation deteriorated further when Hindley's sister Maureen was born in 1946, and the following year, the 5-year-old Myra was sent to live with her grandmother, who lived just nearby. Hindley's father had served with the Parachute Regiment and was stationed in North Africa, Cyprus, and Italy during the Second World War. He had been known as a hard man while in the army, and he expected his daughter to be equally tough. He taught her to fight and insisted that she stick up for herself. When Hindley was aged about 8, a local boy scratched at her cheeks, drawing blood. She burst into tears and ran to her father, who threatened to leather her if she did not retaliate. Hindley found the boy and knocked him down with a series of punches. As she wrote later, quote, "At 8 years old, I'd scored my first victory."
Ah, yes.
Malcolm McCulloch
Intergenerational
was...
trauma.
We love that! Malcolm McCulloch, a professor of forensic psychiatry at Cardiff University, has written that Hindley's, quote, relationship with her father brutalized her. She was not only used to violence in the home, but rewarded for it outside. When this happens at a young age, it can distort a person's reaction to such situations of life. For life, I mean.
Indeed.
In June of 1957, one of Hindley's closest friends, 13-year-old Michael Higgins, invited Hindley to go swimming with friends at a local disused reservoir, but she chose to go somewhere else with a different friend. During that outing, Michael Higgins drowned, and Hindley, who was known to be a very strong swimmer, was deeply upset and blamed herself for years afterwards. She was a bright student, and she won a scholarship to attend a Catholic high school. She left at the age of 16 and worked a series of clerical jobs before meeting Ian Brady at Millward's Merchandising, where they both worked. Hindley was initially drawn to Brady's intelligence and charisma, but she soon became involved in his interests in Nazi ideology and violent fantasies. Hindley wrote about her fascination with Brady in a diary, so we know that they spoke for the first time on July 27th in 1961. Their first date was December 22nd of that year, when he asked her to the cinema. She kept a relatively detailed diary for most of their relationship, so it's really interesting because a lot of the timeline, even like dumb things, like we don't really care about the first time they spoke, but it's like very written and whatever that word is, documented.
Yeah. Had they turned out to
Which
be
is pretty interesting.
a normal couple, it would have been, nobody would have ever read it, but it's handy dandy with
handy dandy.
A noteworthy couple, maybe.
Yes. Their dates from this point followed a very regular pattern: a trip to the cinema, usually to watch an X-rated film, and then back to Hindley's grandmother's house, to drink German wine. Over their budding relationship, Brady gave her reading material and the pair spent their work lunch breaks reading aloud to one another from accounts of Nazi atrocities. At this point, Hindley began to emulate an ideal of Aryan perfection, bleaching her hair blonde and applying red lipstick all the time. It was weird for Shizzle. She expressed concern at some aspects of Brady's behavior in a letter to a childhood friend. She mentioned an incident where she had been drugged by Brady, but also wrote of her obsession with him. So she kind of knew that the tea was not really very good. Whatever was happening was not good, but she just loved him so much, which will come back to be an important point of her defense. Because obviously she said that she was a battered wife or a battered woman, and he forced her to do things and all of that. So, on July 12th, 1963, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley abducted 16-year-old Pauline Reed from a street in Manchester. They lured her into their car, took her to Saddleworth Moor, where they sexually assaulted and murdered her. Her body was not discovered until 1987. On November 23rd.
When did they abduct her?
1963, July 12th.
Yep. That's horrible.
Yep.
Jesus.
On November 23rd, 1963, Brady and Hindley abducted 12-year-old John Kilbride from a market in Ashton-under-Lyne. They took him to Saddleworth Moor, where again they sexually assaulted him and murdered him. His body was not discovered until 1965. On June 16th, 1964, 12-year-old Keith Bennett disappeared on his way to his grandmother's house in Longsight. Brady and Hindley lured him into their car and took him to Saddleworth Moor. His body has never been found. On December 26th, 1964, 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey was lured into their car by Hindley and taken to their home in Hattersley, where they sexually assaulted and murdered her. They took photographs of the abuse and recorded her screaming for help. Her body was later discovered on Saddleworth Moor. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were caught because of a series of events that began in October 1965. On October 7th, 1965, they attempted to abduct a 10-year-old boy named Edward Evans, who they lured into their home in Manchester. Brady bludgeoned Evans to death with an axe, and a neighbor heard the commotion and called the police. When the police arrived, they found Brady and Hindley in the house, along with the body of Edward Evans. Brady was arrested on the spot, and Hindley was arrested the following day. While in custody, Hindley confessed to the murders of Edward Evans, John Kilbride, and Leslie Ann Downey, and provided police with details about where the bodies were buried in Saddleworth Moor. Police began a massive search of the moor, and over the next few months, they found the bodies of the 3 victims Hindley had confessed to killing, as well as those of Pauline Reed, who had been reported missing, but whose bodies had not yet been found. Brady and Hindley were tried together in April 1966, and the case attracted intense media attention. The trial lasted for 14 days, during which the court heard graphic details of the murders and the sadistic behavior of Brady and Hindley. Both were found guilty of all the charges against them, and the judge sentenced them to life imprisonment, a full life sentence. The courtroom that they were being tried in was reinforced, where the defense, lawyers and everyone was sitting, was encased in bulletproof glass. Because of the uproar that happened because of this case, they were afraid that one of the 2 would be assassinated in the courtroom.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable concern.
Fair. Yeah. So, Myra Hindley's defense during her trial for the Moors murders was that she was coerced and manipulated by Ian Brady into participating. Her defense team argued that she was a victim of Brady's dominance and that he had threatened her and her family if she didn't go along with his plans. Hindley also claimed that she was not present during the murders and that she did not participate in the sexual assaults of the victims. She attempted to distance herself from the most violent and sadistic aspects of the crimes, portraying herself as a passive participant who was trapped in an abusive relationship with Brady. However, the evidence presented during the trial, including Hindley's own admissions and photographs that showed her posing with the victims before their deaths, contradicted her defense. The prosecution argued that Hindley was a willing participant in the murders and that she had actively participated in them. Ultimately, the jury rejected Hindley's defense and she was found guilty of all the charges against her. She was sentenced again to life imprisonment, and all of her attempts have been unsuccessful. All of her attempts to appeal, have been unsuccessful. Ian Brady did not mount a defense. He refused to acknowledge the authority of the court and declined to take part in the proceedings. Instead, he made a statement in which he declared that he did not recognize the court's right to try him and that he did not care about the verdict.
What?
Yeah, he's kind of a fuckwad.
That's not even a thing. Like, what is he trying?
He's a dumbass.
You can't just be like, oh, you, legal court, have convicted me of a crime. I deny. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Sorry, but no. Like no hot.
This isn't a hot dog contest. Like,
yeah, very odd man.
Very odd.
This behavior during the trial was consistent with his earlier actions when he refused to cooperate with police as well. He did not offer a defense, but his behavior and statements contributed to the prosecution's portrayal of him as a ruthless, sadistic killer who reveled in the suffering of his victims. The evidence presented at the trial, including tape recordings, left little doubt to Brady's guilt. Again, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison. They were both given full life sentences, which we've talked about before. It just means that they were sentenced to remain in prison for the rest of their life without any possibility of release or parole. They can still submit appeals, which is different because it's like appealing the verdict. Like, I didn't do this, not, okay, I did this, but now let me out.
Yeah.
The judge who sentenced them described the killings as, quote, a calculated, cruel, and cold-blooded series of murders, most of which were accompanied by acts of rape and violence. In 1986, this is after they've been tried and convicted and been in prison for a while, Myra Hindley made a confession to the police in which she gave them details about the location of one of the victims' bodies, which was 12-year-old Keith Bennett. He had never been found She provided police with specific details about the location of the grave on Saddleworth Moor, including sketches of the area and an effort to help locate Keith's remains. Despite extensive searches of the area, however, Keith's body was not found. Hindley's confession did lead to the discovery of the remains of one of the other victims, Pauline Reed, whose body was found buried on the moor in 1987. Hindley's cooperation with the police in this matter did very little to change public perception of her as a ruthless and calculating killer, and many people saw it as a cynical attempt to curry favor with the authorities and improve her chances of a release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which probably, yeah. Ian Brady began a hunger strike in 1999, which lasted until his death in 2017. Obviously, people intervened to keep him alive that long.
Yeah.
He was being held at Ashworth Hospital, a high-security psychiatric hospital where he was serving his life sentence. Brady's hunger strike was a protest against what he saw as his unfair treatment by the authorities and his desire to be allowed to die. During his hunger strike, Brady refused all food and medical treatment, and his health deteriorated rapidly. He was, of course, force-fed on a number of occasions, but continued to refuse to feed himself and refused medical treatment. In 2013, he launched a legal bid to be allowed to starve himself to death, arguing that he had the right to die on his own terms, which is hilarious because he took that right away from all those children.
Yeah.
However, this bid was rejected by the courts, and Brady continued his hunger strike until his death in 2017. His hunger strike was a controversial issue, with many people stating that he had no right to refuse medical treatment, and he was simply prolonging his own suffering, and just because of that aspect that he did take something from a lot of other people that he didn't deserve to go out the way he wanted to. Others have argued that he had the right to decide when and how he died, and that the authorities should respect his wishes. This case highlighted the difficult ethical issues surrounding end-of-life care and the right to die, and sparked a wider debate about these issues in the UK and around the world. Of course, there was also people who thought he should have been hung from the very beginning, for his part in the murders. So it was very, a divisive point in time.
Yeah. That one's tricky too, I feel like, because a lot of the arguments against the death penalty a lot of times are like, well, the justice system isn't 100% accurate, and so people are falsely accused, and so people could, in theory, then be falsely executed. But obviously, if he's doing it to himself, he's sort of in his own way, not admitting to it, I guess, but if he did that out in the world, it wouldn't be a crime. But I guess people may still intervene, right? He could have been whatever.
Yeah,
anyways,
you could call the police and he'd be sent to a psychiatric hospital. I think, because I hate him, but I think he should have been forced to stay alive, and because he doesn't have the right to go in the way that he wants to.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a divisive issue. At the time of the murders in the 1960s, Britain was undergoing a period of significant social and cultural change. The country was still recovering from the trauma of World War II, and there was a growing sense of disillusionment with traditional values and institutions. The Moors murders, with their savage brutality and sexual sadism, seemed to embody many of the anxieties and fears of the era, that if we, went away from the traditional whatever, that kids would die, essentially, and that, the human race would become feral, anarchists.
Classic. I feel like anytime there's any change, that's exactly what everybody thinks is going to happen.
Yeah, and it so far has not.
Has not, no. Well.
The crimes also had a major impact on the public's perception of crime and justice. The case highlighted the need for more effective police investigation techniques, as well as the importance of providing support and counseling for the families of victims. The trial and conviction of the Moors murderers were seen as important milestones in the development of the criminal justice system, and helped to establish precedents for how cases involving multiple murderers and crimes, including sexual offenses, would be prosecuted in the future. The Moors murders also had a long-lasting impact on popular culture, inspiring a number of books, films, and television programs that explored the case and its aftermath. The crimes continue to be studied and analyzed by criminologists and psychologists, and have contributed to our understanding of the nature of psychopathic behavior and the dynamics of abusive relationships. The end.
Interesting.
Yes. Who did we talk about? Fred and Rosemary West. That was also in the United Kingdom, and that shook people. The Moors murders, I think, maybe shook people a little bit more. I think it was... a lot of people were disgusted by the fact that a woman was helping. Same with Fred and Rosemary West.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it was definitely like, oh, if you're lost and a child, go and find a woman. Women are nice, and they aren't going to do that. That's a man thing.
Yeah.
Murder's a man thing. And so the fact that there was a woman helping in this crime was really shocking to a lot of the public.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of children. Moors are like bogs, kind of. Like, it's not... I'm going to Google, because I can't explain it.
It's like a
But
dry swamp,
it's...
right?
Yeah.
Which is like a terrible description, but like damp, sucky in dirt, kind of. Like maybe
Yeah.
rainforesty adjacent kind of thing.
It's like kind of damp, often used to describe uncultivated hilly areas. If wet, a moor is generally synonymous with bog. So it's essentially like they not only killed and assaulted these children, they also left them somewhere so out of the way, by themselves. Like, I think that was a lot of... I don't know, because I wasn't born yet, but I think a lot of the, like, outrage came from the fact they were kids and they were abandoned on this
I can see
moor.
that.
Yeah. There's also pictures of the two of them standing on their graves, the shallow graves that they put these children in, and they often took Myra's dog up there. The dog was called Puppet, and like, this was a place that they put their first victim in, like, left them there, and then consistently visited for years. It was like their own personal, like, I don't even know. So
that's horrible.
Yeah, it was just very gross. Yeah. Really, really unsettling, I guess, that you can do that. And then also, like, you know that there is a dead child on the place that you're playing fetch with your dog. Like, how do you... Something has to be a little bit loose in the brain to be able to, like, be okay with that.
Yeah, to just, like, totally separate the two.
Ian Brady has actually, or was, diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, as it's known now. At the time, he was a diagnosed psychopath, but that was quite a few years, actually, after they were... I think that was, like, mid-80s when he was diagnosed with that, so they'd been in prison for a while. But
interesting.
Is the story of the Moors murders.
You know, I don't think I've ever heard of that case before. Weirdly
Really?
enough. Yeah. I can't think of it as didn't really... I was surprised at every turn. But sometimes my
Sinister
memory's
Mum
a
and
little
Dad talk
foggy.
about it sometimes. But yeah. That's the Moors murders.
Interesting. And that's the end of season 2 Devious Duos.
It is.
Now we're on to season 3.
Thank you for tuning in.
Whatever we wish. Every
season
Sunday.
3, whatever crimes I want to talk about.
Yes.
I might do some, like... I find murders to be the most interesting. But if you have a case that you want me to talk about that is not murder, but is still true crime, like, I've been watching a lot of videos on Sherry Papini, who, like, faked her kidnapping. Pretty interesting. And so, like, if you want to hear more about true crime that isn't just murder, then you can leave that in the case request.
Let us know. Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Or listening, or however you are taking part in this week's episode. Thank you very much for listening to me talking for like an hour.
Yay!
Bye!
Thanks. Bye!